Well, hello everyone, and welcome to the playoff edition. Wow, I haven't said that in a few years. Sounds good, doesn't it? The playoff edition of Get Me the Brandy. Dan Potash alongside the voice of the Pittsburgh Penguins, Josh Getzoff. I shouldn't say alongside, because then I would be riding shotgun in your car. Look at you in the wheels. I
Yes.
like that, huh?
I am parked for what it's worth, just for all those out there. And
Yeah.
a car just drove by that you could see. This is a real life action movie happening here. But yes, if you could be shotgun with me, Dan, I wouldn't want anybody else there.
That's right. Very nice. I appreciate that. Unfortunately, we are not starting this episode the way we had envisioned it originally, but that's okay. That's why it's a series. It's a series. It's a best of seven. However, game one is in the books. The Penguins came up short. But before we get to the X's and O's, you've been in Pittsburgh now for 10 years. I've been here for a little bit longer. The atmosphere in the building, and I was just talking to our producer, Nick, about this before we came on the air. For me, the electricity inside PPG Paints Arena, I had not seen anything like that. And I'm going to back it up to 2008 and 2009 when the Penguins reached the final, because it was their first appearance in the final since 91-92, and the place was just electric. I mean, just booming. So take that thought. This is their first appearance in the postseason since 2022. I think we saw that same kind of excitement last night.
100%. I mean, that was first of all, I think our SNP team, just to toot the horns of a couple guys that would be angry that I mentioned their name, but they should get some deserved recognition. Kevin Wheeler, the director for Penguins broadcasts, and Matt Aaron, the producer, the way that they portrayed the scene inside PPG Paints Arena, I thought was exceptional. And really, if you were watching at home, you felt what you and I saw in person inside that building, and it was electric. I mean, I don't remember the energy being that high in that building. I mean, you probably go back to 16, 17. That's the easy answer, I guess, but certainly nothing comes to mind that's come close to that since those days till last night. And it was great to see the gold towels going. I know people have their thoughts on the gold jerseys, but everything popped aesthetically when they came out there, and they had the wrap on the lower bowl in gold and all that. The air raid siren, great to hear that back again. So everything about it, to me, felt like the Penguins were back where they belonged. They were back in the Stanley Cup playoffs, and the game was a different story. But that whole scene set as it began was goosebump inducing, Dan.
Yes, it certainly was. Let's talk about the game. And as we expected, the Flyers brought a physical element, and it was chippy at times. Though I felt that the game kind of turned more so in their favor in the second period. And I know that there were bits and pieces where the Penguins started to appear to show some life. Evgeny Malkin obviously getting them on the board, setting up the 1-1 tie going into the final 20. But overall, I thought that the Penguins looked like a team that had not played a game since Tuesday. And if you want to take that a step further, they looked like a team that did not have their full roster of players, not because they were all injured, but a lot of guys didn't play by design in the back-to-back weekend against the Caps or in the season finale against the Blues. And they just seemed to be off the mark just a little bit in their game.
I agree. I thought, it's kind of funny if you were to scan just a group of us and say, if the Penguins were having this home playoff game in game one, and the building was going to be that electric, and there was going to be all this excitement and energy and just expectation that something great was going to be happening, and then you got gifted a power play less than 2 minutes in, you'd think, all right, off to the races. Here we go. We're going to get this goal, and it's going to be, the floodgates are going to open right away, and things are going to be a party all night here in Pittsburgh. But in a way, I actually think that power play, it's easy to say now, hindsight being 20/20, but that's kind of what we're doing here and analyzing what happened in game one. That was the worst thing that could have happened because they were jittery and they were nervous. It was obvious. And they weren't crisp or clean in any of the passes they were making. And maybe rusty, too, to your point, in the sense of not having the full group together for the better part of over a week. I know guys mixed in games here and there, but that those games weren't played with the intensity and the urgency that comes with Stanley Cup playoff hockey. And quite honestly, I don't think you can manufacture that unless you're physically in those moments. And the Flyers have been in those moments for the better part of the last month. The Penguins were in it as well, and they played some incredible games in the early portion of April and end of March to get themselves in to the playoff picture. But it's hard to get right back into that when you haven't been at that level. So I think actually that early power play, in a way, let the Flyers settle in a little bit more and made the Penguins maybe grip the sticks a little tighter and thinking, oh, man, we let an opportunity go by the wayside here. And that really set the wheels in motion for what was a first period that Philly pretty much controlled, I thought, after that.
Yeah, they showed a lot of chippiness, physical play. The Flyers overall, and we'll get to this in more detail in just a second when it comes to defensive play and the way they kind of slowed things in the neutral zone and so forth. But the Penguins did try to defend, if you will, or rebound with some physical play as well. And I just wonder, is that something that they need to monitor and control or rein in a little bit? Because that's not really their kind of play. So you can't, I guess you could take it up a notch because it is the playoffs, but that can't be your MO because it hasn't been the Penguins' MO all season.
Yeah, I feel like that's part of the battle with the playoffs is you have so much energy and adrenaline, and you need to find a way to channel it in a way that's most effective to how you play. Excuse me. And to your point, the way the Penguins play is not crash, bang, boom. They are a team that can throw the body, but they do it with a purpose on the forecheck to dislodge defensemen from pucks, to win puck battles on the walls. That's where their physicality, quote unquote, comes into play. They're not the open ice hit type of team looking to take guys' heads off, anything like that. But I did agree. I felt like there were a few moments last night where, yeah, I mean, you're never not going to get jacked up if there's a hit in a playoff game and it's the team that you want to win delivering the hit. But at the same time, I feel like if you're going out of your way to make that a part of your game when it's not your identity, it's going to be a detriment to the game as a team that you put on the ice. And I give the Flyers a lot of credit. And you know just as well as I do, Dan, their head coach knows every single button to push with some of the big boys on the Penguins. And he was pushing every one all night long with what he was telling his players to do. And, of course, that's Rick Tocchet. And Todd Reirden, too, for that matter, assistant coach who knows those guys well, particularly Chris Letang. So I think that plays a little bit of a role. And I think that they definitely, the Flyers, it was very obvious. I mean, the first 2 or 3 shifts, Igor Chinakhov was on his backside 2 or 3 times. Ben Kindle was knocked down. Like it was very obvious what the game plan was for the Flyers. And I don't think that it surprised anybody. But to your point, the Penguins running around a little bit, that's what made you cringe a little bit because that's not the game they want to play to get them the results they want in this series. And I think they know that. And I'll be curious to see how they manage that emotion and still have the fire and the intensity and everything that comes with winning a playoff game while playing within themselves and within their style in game 2.
So let's talk about their actual play when it comes away, goes away from the physical element. 2 things that really stood out to everyone in attendance, let alone the media and broadcasters. The Penguins had a hard time getting to their offensive game, which is saying a lot considering that the Penguins entered the game averaging just over 3.5 goals per game, 290 scored on their season, just 17 shots on goal. That raised one red flag. At the same time, the Flyers, who have had some issues, or at least some challenges when it comes to scoring goals, all of a sudden had odd man break after odd man break, grade A chance. Those are 2 things that I think need to be corrected immediately as far as setting the tone come period number 1 of game number 2.
Definitely. I think that goes back to kind of what you and I were saying in the very beginning. It was sloppy. I mean, it wasn't the Penguins that we've come to know. That's a compliment to this team. The game that we saw last night is an extreme outlier for who the Penguins have looked like throughout this entire season. And they've been consistent in that identity. They're crisp with their passes. Their breakouts are clean. Their forecheck is effective and they get to it early. And they, really over the last month haven't been a super heavy shot volume team, but they've been able to manufacture real quality opportunities. And, I was talking to Colby Armstrong a little bit about it this morning, in between game one and game two, and you could maybe say one or two saves by Dan Vladar that are like, okay, that was a good save. I mean, he probably wants the Malkin goal back. I don't think that he really had a game that left him anything as far as doubting his abilities, because he wasn't, quite frankly, challenged all that often. And that's, again, there's two teams in this game, and the Penguins, they didn't have a great game, but the Flyers, that's their MO. They suppress shots. I mean, they've allowed the fourth fewest shots on goal in the NHL coming to last night and coming into the Stanley Cup playoffs. Like, this is not new for what they do, but for the Penguins, the key is finding a way around that. And I really think it starts with their forecheck. And I don't think they were able to get pucks behind the Flyer defense. I think Philly did an exceptional job in the neutral zone of slowing down the Penguins' attack. And when they did get around it, they didn't have numbers into the zone to pursue pucks. So these are adjustments that can be made. I mean, it's hard to make them in game, but there are adjustments that can be made, and we saw some things in practice that I think are worth watching in game two. A lot of rimming around the walls and trying to stretch things out in the offensive zone, which, is generally what you try to see teams do when teams play like the Flyers, where they really are good at shutting down lanes and they have great support defensively in their zone. So I think everything's correctable. But at the end of the day, you do have to recognize that the other team last night played a pretty good road game in Philadelphia, and it's on the Penguins to raise their ante here in game two.
Yeah, I had a chance to talk to some of the Penguins after practice today here in Cranberry about how they can do a better job of getting to their game offensively and at the same time prevent some of those odd man breaks and grade A chances. You'll hear from the players on that coming up on Penguins Tonight and Penguins Face Off Live prior to game number 2 here on SportsNet Pittsburgh. All right, so let's talk about what was really, really good for the Penguins last night, Stuart Skinner. And correct me if I'm wrong, did he not look like a goaltender that has all kinds of experience from taking the Edmonton Oilers to back-to-back Stanley Cup finals? Because that play last night, or his play last night in game one, is exactly what you want your goaltender to do, hopefully for 16 victories in a long run through the Stanley Cup playoffs.
He was awesome. I mean, it's unfortunate because it's another one of those situations, Dan, where you see the stat line at the end. It's 3 goals against on 20 shots, and people are going to make their assumptions. But you were there, I was there. Anybody who watched this game would say the best player for the Penguins was that guy, Stu Skinner. And the experience showed. I mean, to me, he's always had this kind of unique calmness, and I think I notice it even when they come out on the ice, when he leads them out. He has this very just confident strut onto the ice. He doesn't come charging out of the gate. He doesn't, barrel towards the net. He just kind of glides out there and takes his spot in the crease. And I see that in how he plays the position. I mean, it's just a controlled, confident type of style. And I thought last night he made some incredible stops. I mean, I think about the save on Zegras, the save on Tippett. You stopped Denver Barkey in tight. Christian Dvorak had an excellent deflection in the first period that he got a piece of. So I thought he was great. And I really felt for him in a way that the Penguins didn't quite pick him up. And there's a lot of people who probably have followed the playoffs the last couple of years and know that Stu Skinner can go up and he can go down. But one thing that actually weirdly was a theme for him in Edmonton is a lot of times he didn't get the run support in goal. And last night was a similar theme for him, unfortunately, with the Penguins not giving him that at the other end of the ice. But I thought the only reason they had a chance there to really pull that one out in the third period in a 1-1 game as you got ready for the third was because of their goaltender. And that also probably to some people, Dan, was the biggest question mark for the Penguins coming into the series. So if you're not answering questions about that after one game, and it's really within the group to answer the questions, I think, your spot could be worse as a team. And the Penguins, have correctable issues that they can get in order for game 2.
So is this the version of Stu, that we'll see or that we can see? Yes, well done. Watch out for the traffic behind you when you do that. Is this the version that could be stretched out for a series? I mean, I guess you could say that's asking a lot of a goaltender, but goalie's got to be your best player, right?
In the playoffs, especially. Yeah, I mean, I still am wondering what the Penguins are going to do with their goaltending situation. Now, for the record, as you and I sit here, I would be really surprised if Stu doesn't go back in for Game 2. But Dan Muse has not really shown a ton of loyalty to either guy. There's been shifting all year long, and that goes back to when Tristan Jarry was in the mix. So loyalty is probably the wrong word, but he hasn't shown a true, steadfast number one, this is my ace in the hole guy throughout the course of the season. He's given both guys an opportunity. I personally think it's important to have one guy be the guy come playoff time. I think it can get tricky when you don't really have that defined for how the psyche of your team goes. But is it sustainable? I think so. I mean, the other side of it is, as much as the Penguins didn't have their A game and maybe even B game at times last night, the Flyers only had 20 shots, and they only had 4 in the third period. Now, granted, 2 of those went in. But it's not like the Penguins, yes, they hemorrhaged those breakaways, and I'm not being blind to that. There are certainly flaws within their game, but it's not like they gave up 65 shots and Stu was out of his mind making 60 saves. Like, he made 17 saves. He made some really big saves in there, but his workload wasn't insane. As far as just like the volume of shots coming towards him. So, yes, I think if the Penguins can keep the shot levels low, that work level for him is sustainable. At the other end of the ice, like I said, I don't think Dan Vladar got a significant amount of tests, and it would behoove the Penguins to funnel pucks at him early in Game 2 because he hasn't really had that moment of, oh, man, this is the playoffs. I need to make the next save. Like, even after Malkin's goal last night, when I really thought that was an opportunity to start to pepper him, they didn't get many pucks on net from that point forward through the rest of the period. So I think, neither goalie looked like they were a weakness for their team in Game 1, and we'll see how it goes in Game 2.
You talk about seeing more shots or providing more shots, producing more shots is the better word, against the Flyers goaltender. So you need that from all 4 lines, right? You need them all to be productive. But let's stay with that 4th line for a second. And we got a chance to see the return of Blake Lizotte and Connor Dewar. Lizotte had missed, the final 16 games of the regular season. Dewar, 4 or 5 of the regular season. So to have them back, along with Nola Chari, your thoughts on how that line not only played, but once they kind of get their chemistry back together, what they could maybe do as soon as tomorrow night in Game 2.
I think you saw little wrinkles of just how effective they can be, right? They had a couple of those shifts where you're like, okay, I remember this. I remember how good this group can be and how they can change the tide and how they can even provide a spark and carry the momentum for this Penguins team. And that's the other thing that you just mentioned, Dan, and I think it goes to the whole lineup. This whole group, as far as what we saw on the ice last night, they haven't played together that much. That's the benefit of what happened. I don't think they felt like they needed to force Connor Dewar into any games down the stretch because they were in. Blake Lizotte, who knows? Maybe if they don't clinch in New Jersey and those games going into the weekend meant something, maybe he comes back a week earlier than everyone thought. But because they were in, what's the point? He's going to play in the playoffs. So I think, like I said earlier, I feel like it's hard to manufacture the level that is the Stanley Cup playoffs in anything other than the game itself. And now the Penguins have had one of those games. I think personally that's the excuse runs out after the first period last night. Like I would have liked to have seen them reach another gear in the second or third, but it didn't happen. And now you have that game. You have a little bit to build off of. You have some video to review. You can see what you did, that held you back in Game 1. But for that group, for those 3, I think they just did what they've done. They just didn't have that synergy that comes with playing together every single night. And I agree. I wouldn't be surprised if as soon as the first shift, which, by the way, if you're listening, Dan Muse, start them. Start that line. I know it was Game 1. I understand why he started Sidney Crosby. Start that line. They do the same thing every time. They get the puck in. They barrel into guys. They get everyone going. That's what I would do going into Game 2. I'd start them, and then I'd roll Sid right over after that and see where you're at. But I think that line all year long, I know you'd agree with me, Dan, they've been such a spark plug and such an energy line for this team, and so important just to their overall success when the three of them are in the lineup together. That it's hard for me to believe moving forward in this series they're not going to have an impact. And I'm with you. I hope it's as soon as Monday night.
So let's hit pause on going any further on game two just for a second, because I want to get your final thoughts on game one. Look, at practice today, nothing changed as far as the lines, D pairs. I would think that signals, hey, we are confident in what this group can do. They were just off a beat or several beats for whatever reason, but we think that once they get back into a rhythm, maybe it's because they were off for a few days and didn't have a game for a few days, that this is an offense that can produce like we saw throughout the season, or at least towards the end of the season, with a lot of goal production. And at the same time, maybe it's Stu Skinner that goes back in there. I don't think they need to change much. They just need to finish getting to their game.
Yeah, I think they just need to breathe. They just need to just realize that, yes, there needs to be a sense of urgency in this game that maybe wasn't there. I'm hesitant to use these words because I think we both know they care. They want to win the game. They're all in on trying to make this happen, but they're also human. And it, to me, felt like a team that was a little bit rusty and a bit nervous when that game started on Saturday night. I don't know what we're going to see on Monday, but I have to think, based on what we know about this group and how they've responded all year long, that they will be ready. And the one thing that was unusual to me about how that game started on Saturday night is that they started a little slow. And this Penguins team, unlike last year, Dan, where they fell behind so often in the first period, the first shot, we remember all those disasters. This year, so often they score the first goal. So often they have a great first few shifts to establish themselves. And, they had a good start last night with the power play, but then they kind of lost that momentum early. So I just felt like those are the kind of things that I'll be watching early on in game two. But, to your point, to go back to game one, I think everything is correctable. And that's, to me, when I walked out of the rink on Saturday night, yeah, you're discouraged. You're disappointed, especially with how popping the building was when everything started. But there wasn't anything from that game that had me thinking they're in trouble. There was more from that game that had me thinking they need to wake up and they need to get things going as far as just their overall team. But it was more Penguins issues than it was Flyer dominance or anything like that. That's just my opinion.
Okay, so let's quickly touch on game two and a couple of musts that we have to see from this team in order for them to even the series at one game apiece. If I could start, the power play needs to get its groove back. Last night, a couple opportunities, one, maybe two shots. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but they need to find a way to get back to the power play that we saw before the final, 5 or 6 games of the regular season.
Yep, I'm with you 100%, and that was the whole group out there last night, and I agree. I felt like, I think it was, what was the power play, not their first one, which, they didn't convert on early in the game that we mentioned earlier, but there was another one they had later where they went offside 2 or 3 times, and just, they looked completely out of rhythm and out of sync, and again, just not characteristics that we've come to expect from the Penguins this year, and that's why I feel okay, because it just seems like such an outlier of a performance for them overall. So I agree. I think that's a huge area, and it's an area that they dominated the Flyers in the regular season. I think going into last night, they were 7 for 18 on the power play, almost 40% against Philly in the head-to-head on the regular season. So they made that a factor. Last night it wasn't, but I agree. That's been something for the Penguins all year. The power play's been part of their DNA and the success of it. So hopefully if they get those opportunities on Monday night, they convert.
Yeah, and I if I can ask one thing, the crowd needs to return to the same level of energy that we saw on the Saturday. I know it's a weekday. I know it's a Monday night. I get it. It's a school night for many. It won't be starting at 8:30. That helps. a 7 o'clock start. You just don't change a thing. Bring that same fire and intensity because, look, as broadcasters, you can't tell. I was extremely excited to see that kind of vibe in the building. It gets you fired up to talk about it, to break it down, to explain to viewers what's going on. Well, imagine being a player and feeling that. I mean, and we also know the hornet's nest that the Penguins are headed to for games 3 and 4.
Yep, that's and also I think too, Dan, that makes it even more important to make sure you handle your business on Monday night. 0-2 aside, going into Philly down 0-2 aside, all that stuff. If you win this game, then the doubt is in their building a little bit if you start to do some good things going into Philadelphia. Easier said than done. But it wouldn't be the first time the Penguins have gone in there and turned in an unbelievable road playoff performance if they do so in games 3 or 4. In fact, they've done it. Some of the more memorable Penguins moments in this series have come in Philly in these games. So we'll see. But, I mean, as far as game 2, I'm with you. I expect the building to be rocking again. I expect everything to be at a similar tone as it was before game 1. I would throw one other thing. You mentioned the special teams. The other thing for me that I'm curious to see what they do is I would like to see a little bit more of – it sounds simple, but I'd like to dump the puck and chase after it. I felt like they tried to skate through the Flyers in the neutral zone, and it was pretty apparent early that that's not going to happen. And if you can generate speed through center while you're dumping it in and you have a forward on the forecheck and some support, and you spread out this Flyer defense that also looked pretty comfortable at times last night, and they have some good skaters back there, like York and Drysdale for sure, but at the same time, you can get behind them and you can make things difficult for them, and over the course of the series, that can pay dividends. To that point also, Dan, I think, and Colby and I were talking about this, I think what the Flyers did last night from a structural standpoint is sustainable. I'm not sure the physicality they played with is sustainable. It is hard to hit that much and play that well for every single night. So if you keep sticking with it, and as Dan Muse said today, you have a little patience in your game and how you approach things, it might pay off with the way that they're kind of tiring themselves out. Yes, I know they're no longer having no playoff debuts. They've all played their first games. No one's going to talk about that anymore. But now you figure out, can they handle the mental and emotional rigors of the playoffs? And the Penguins will find that out about themselves too. But I think one game is always fun in the playoffs, and I know you enjoy it too because everyone's always snapping at judgments about this and that. It was one game, man. You got to win 4. And you got to play at least 4, if not more, to get to the second round. So for the Penguins' perspective, it's at least 5 now. But I really feel like we'll see what happens on Monday night, but there's no reason to be discouraged from a Penguin perspective just yet.
Well, I will say this, as we wrap things up, a lot of players on both sides got a chance to experience Stanley Cup playoff hockey for the first time, and the same goes true for you. As a broadcaster in the National Hockey League, I expect you to continue to call action like you did last night. You don't need to raise your level because it was already up here. Well done, Josh.
Hey, they make it easy for me, Dan. That's all I have to do. When the building's like that and the games are like that, Battle of Pennsylvania is just chaos. And there is a part, right, like that. You know, the Penguins' best way to win is not to get involved in that stuff. But at the same time, the entertainment aspect of it is unbelievable. So it's a tough chord to pull back and forth. But I'll sacrifice the chaos for a series win. So let's see if we can get back on the right ship tomorrow.
Yeah, let's see what happens for game number 2. All right, Josh, put both hands back on the steering wheel. Safe driving.
Okay.
I'll see you at the morning skate, and we'll get ready for game 2. And thank you to you for watching
that sounds good.
The playoff edition of Get Me the Brandy.
Oh, Lord Stanley, get me the brandy.